So this video will be focusing on the start of the wall builds. You can see there we've got the sole plate and then we've got the bottom wall plate nailed to the top of that, and my plumb line running along the whole length of the wall. This is to ensure that we keep the wall plate in the right position on the sole plate. This side's going to have insulation on the bottom of the original bungalow wall, so I've got to make sure that I've got a suitable overhang so the top walls will finish flush with the downstairs insulation. What I'm going to have to do is, because the bungalow's not square, I'm going to have to mark up and build a square second floor on the wonky bungalow. Hence why I've got the wider sole plate as explained in one of the previous videos. Another thing worth noting is there are two options to building the walls. You can either do them in stick form like I'll be doing, or you can build the full wall up on the floor and then stand it up. Apart from the fact I'm doing it on my own, so it'll be a lot easier doing it in stick form. Because the sole plate isn't levelled, because the bungalow is so far out, it'll be a lot easier cutting each stud to its own correct length rather than trying to build a square wall and then pack it so it's the right height to match the sole plate. What I've made is a little measurement staff with 400mm centres marked on it, so I can use this staff to transfer the mark onto my wall plate, so I know that every stud is uniform and set at 400mm centres. So I've marked the wall plate, so you can see there that arrow reflects the inside edge of the studs, so they're all in the right place on the wall plate. So the next phase now is to try and get the top wall plate on. It's not ideal because I haven't got the front steel in, so I'm not able to put the floor joist in on the front part, so I've got no real platform to build it from. So I'm going to have to do all of a step ladder from the scaffold, which makes it a little bit more difficult because the walls are quite high and they're out of reach. As you can see there, the rear floors, they're just a little bit higher, which gives me a bit of a higher platform to have to work from. I know this all looks a bit mental and crazy, but obviously when you're working on your own with high walls, you've got to be a bit creative. So I've created this little mechanism of getting the wall plate up onto the top so it's nice and level. So what I did is I braced the front stud so it's plumb and it's vertical, and that is cut to the right height, which is 5.6 meters to the top of the second wall plate. What I then did is I created a little track on the far end and put some screws in it so I could step the top wall plate up bit by bit. So I put one nail in the top of the wall plate, so as I pivot it, it won't move and slip off the stud. So it's kind of fixed around the point of the nail. And then I've lifted it bit by bit, staggering it with screws to step it up and then get it perfectly level. I've then been able to fix it in position, and then I've braced it so it can't go anywhere. So now that top wall plate is completely level and that first stud is cut to the right height. So we're making good progress now. I've basically built the first wall, which will be for the small fourth bedroom / walk-in wardrobe. I've then extended the wall plate across and extended the wall across, and we're now at the point where we've got to build our first 3-ply spreader beam. If you look at the drawing here, you can see there's a 3-ply beam there on the bottom. That's basically to go above the windows that are downstairs in the bungalow underneath. Originally it was supposed to be longer and there was supposed to be a proper steel there, but we're blocking the big bathroom window up and we're just going to keep the small toilet one there because eventually that'll be a utility room. So it's a lot smaller, but it's still 3 8x2s all bolted together and countersunk with coach bolts right the way through it. So it's quite a big lump. That goes flush with the wall plate there, as you can see, and then the studs screw into that. It just basically means that all the load from the walls is spread to either side of the window rather than it going through the window. So over every opening or window downstairs I've got to have one of these beams, and then above every new window on the second floor I've got to have a 3-ply beam above it to spread the load from the roof trusses. So it just kind of helps transfer the load to the ground, which is what that's the key part of any building, is getting that load down to the ground safely transferred into the foundations. So mission success. I've got my first window framed. It's a metre by metre window for the main bathroom. You've got the 3-ply beam along the top. It's just nailed together at the moment. I haven't drilled through and countersunk it here with the coach bolts. But that'll transfer the load down. I put 3 studs either side on this window, and I will do on the 2 ensuite windows opposite as well, because this is the side of the house and these will be physically supporting the trusses, so I wanted to strengthen it up a little bit. Sod's law, the steel ended right where I didn't want it to be, so I've had to cut one of them studs down a little bit just to step over the steel, but it's nothing major. But you can see there it fixes into that bottom 3-ply beam and then goes across. So it's a bit annoying because I've had to move the window very slightly because the steel sits right where we're going to have the bath. So the drainage obviously going into the floor void will hit the steel, so we've had to move and rejig everything around a little bit. So hopefully it will all now fit and work out okay and be alright. So I've now got to go and build another one of them 3-ply beams and place it down here because there's the kitchen door underneath, so it's got to basically spread the load over the kitchen door. And just like that, we now have a new wall. So this is for Rose's bedroom. So you've got the 3-ply beam on the bottom there with the studs going into it, so that goes above the downstairs kitchen door, spreading the load. I've tried to go for 400mm stud centres as much as I can, but sometimes you just can't odds it. Obviously the widths of the windows dictate your centres, and obviously we've got to have studs screwed into the end of the 3-ply beams, so sometimes you just can't help it but have smaller spacings, which is a nightmare because I've got to try to insulate them, but you know, it is what it is. You've got to space it the best you can to get your full lengths of your wall. I've also placed all the wall plates so they're on the half of a stud each, so the joints between the wall plates are both supported by a stud, and then there'll be a big wall plate, as you can see there, that goes over the top of the whole thing, and they're staggered as well, so that gives it the extra strength. You should always try and put 2 wall plates on the top if you can, just because it covers any joints. So that's basically 2.5 days it took me to build all of that side wall, so you can see why building timber frame in stick form is quite cost effective and time effective compared to trying to do it out of brick. So what I'm doing now is I've made the 3-ply beam up, and I'm now trying to fill it into place of the window. As I explained earlier, because of the sheer weight of these things, they're extremely difficult to lift on your own. So I've had to create a little holding platform there with some 8x2 clamps on the scaffold poles just to support it somewhere near, and then I'm able to screw into the sides and then screw up through the wall plate into the 3-ply beam to get it into position. Once it's up, it's then a case of getting my spirit level and trying to level it and position it into a place where I'm happy, and I can start to build the window around it. I'd learned by this point that it's a lot easier and safer to dry fit it first with screws rather than nailing it. So I try to build all of these walls now with the screws first, so I can easily take the screws out and adjust it. I've learnt the hard way, but as soon as you start using the nail gun on it, it's extremely difficult to get them 90mm nails out. So I always dry fit it first with screws, get it perfect, and I can nail it into place afterwards. So what I'm doing now is I've got a full length of 6x2 and I've screwed it into the 3-ply beam, just so I can now try to fine tune it and get it level. So I've got a long 6x2 there wedged into the scaffold, and I'm just pushing that or releasing that down a little bit just to support it in its level position. Once I'm happy with it, I can then screw that left hand side 6x2 into it at the right height, and then mark and cut the correct position and height of that 6x2, ready to create the left hand side. to make sure the bottom side of the window is level and at the same height as the right hand side window, I've now run a plumb line across the sill of the right hand window across to the left, so I can work out my heights and get everything level. So from the back garden, the windows look like they're in the same position and the same height.